everyone. I'm Becky Vermont, your guest host for this evening's edition of Higher Ed Live, the weekly web show for marketing and web professionals. Tune in to Higher Ed Live on Thursday nights, that's tonight, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on higheredlive.com, and join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag HigherEdLive. You can follow me on Twitter at Becky Vermont, B-E-C-K-Y, like the state with a B. So a little bit about me. Until 2 months ago, I ran marketing and communications at the Rhode Island School of Design, which we call RISD. RISD is an art school, half fine arts, half design. We're about 2,300 students in Providence, Rhode Island, more than 135 years old. 17 different major programs, everything from ceramics to glass to industrial design to digital media. So the media group, which is what the marketing and communications group was called, we were a standalone group that reported directly into the president. We were primarily focused on enrollment and fundraising. We got a new enrollment management professional running that group a couple years ago, so we'd been doing a lot of work on undergrad admissions, which was really exciting. I loved the work, and it was very interesting and unique to be able to do creative work in a design school. I think I had more conversations about the smell of the paper and fonts and color choices than I ever thought imaginable. All of these things are really important when you're functioning in a design school. And about 2 years ago, at a board meeting, one of our trustees, people were talking about kind of the state of education in America and how much focus Obama had started to put on STEM education. And one of our trustees said, you know what, we need to add art to STEM and call it STEAM. Now, he wasn't the first one to say this, but it kind of caught a lot of momentum in the board meeting, and then we started throwing in the idea of what would it look like to think about what STEAM would mean instead of STEM. So our president became really passionate about this issue. He's someone who has a background in STEM himself. He worked at MIT. I actually worked with him there at the Media Lab before coming to RISD. And we also had a government relations person who got really passionate about this idea. And because of the size of Rhode Island, it's a tiny state, and we still have 4 congressional representatives, so you get a lot of access to them that you wouldn't get in another state. So we were able to get something going. And so today, that's the story I wanted to tell you, is about how STEAM caught fire. And what I'm really excited about tonight is being able to talk and tell this story to a group of marketing professionals, because that's what I am, and that's what's really excited me about this idea. Is it's turned into an advocacy platform for RISD, but also an amazing platform to get our name out there and think about how thought leadership can really be marketing for a school. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what that means to me, and how I believe it's really a new kind of marketing that schools and other institutions can be thinking about. So before I begin, I'd like to give a few shout outs to the sponsors of this show. Omni Update is the leading web content management system. Everyone always needs a new CMS. Provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, called OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. Everyone wants all of those things from their CMS. Check out a new white paper about it called Understanding Open Source Free Puppy Syndrome and Other Maladies. Higher Ed Live is also sponsored by Uversity, formerly called Integral, the creators of the Schools app. It's a private Facebook community to boost enrollment and retention. And check out their blog, Uversity Roundtable, for posts on admissions marketing, student engagement, and social media in higher education. We're going to tweet that link out now. So unlike most Higher Ed Live shows, which is more of a chat show, I have a short kind of 20 or 30-minute presentation to share the story of STEAM at RISD and how that became a new kind of marketing for us. And then I'm happy to take any questions. So if you have questions that come up during the show, tweet them out to with the hashtag HigherEdLive, and then we can discuss at the end. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen now with all of you, and so you can see the slides that I'm going to be talking about. Hold 1 minute. Okay, so this is just the title slide. Let me get back in Keynote. This is interesting now. How do I advance? 1 sec. Sorry about this. So let me start with what STEAM is. So we called STEAM a movement championed by the Rhode Island School of Design that argues that an education in creativity and critical thinking and making, which is what we teach at RISD, produces innovators that will keep America competitive in this century. So this is one of those mission statements where every word was labored upon by way too many people, and we got feedback from all kinds of faculty, trustees, students, people who were involved in this to kind of hone what we thought we were doing with STEAM. And for us, it was really about making a connection between the education at RISD and economic competitiveness. And so that's not an obvious connection to make with an art school. Art schools are under a lot of fire these days for being, just like liberal arts schools in many ways, kind of not practical. What are you going to do with this education? And so rather than defending that all the time and saying, you know, we're expensive but worth the money, we kind of subverted that whole thing and tried to make an argument that innovation comes from creativity, and creativity comes from art schools. So you need that to kind of combine with a more traditional STEM education to create economic competitiveness. So I'm going to take you through kind of our argument, but I also want to kind of lay out for you as marketers why we did this and why we thought that this would be an interesting platform for us as an art school. So the first thing is, you know, STEM education, as Obama puts it, is a lot about K through 12 education. And obviously we're a college, so you wouldn't think it's as immediately applicable. But for us, keeping arts in high schools is extremely important in terms of keeping our the caliber of our incoming students strong. If there's no art programs in high school, you know, our foundation studies, which is a freshman year program at RISD, the dean of that program is always talking about how she knows who got art in high school and who didn't because of the way that they come into RISD. And the other thing I mentioned is it makes a case for arts education in the face of rising costs. It also reinforces our leadership position among art schools. And this is really kind of the big thought leadership argument. And I'll go through each of these arguments kind of as I go through the presentation. But, you know, this is, I think, what distinguishes thought leadership as a kind of marketing is, you know, we put RISD kind of in the mission statement for STEAM, but STEAM isn't about RISD necessarily. And that's, I think that's the distinction, and that's what's new about it, but it also allows you to kind of make a case that you wouldn't be able to make if you were just advertising your school. STEAM also gets our graduates jobs. It's making the economic argument. It's saying that art school and design school graduates are really key to what your company is doing and can help you grow your company. And it also opens doors for research money for RISD. So you'll get a better sense of kind of how we played with each of these as I go through the presentation. So to start, I'm just going to give a little overview of how we came to this. I mean, STEAM became a thing because STEM was a thing. Obama and Bush before him, actually, STEM became a governmental initiative and priority in 2006, and Obama has run with it as well. In 2013, this year, in the State of the Union, he reiterated how important it is, saying that science and technology, engineering, and math are the skills that today's employers are looking for to fill jobs. Also in the State of the Union, he said, a once shuttered warehouse is now a state-of-the-art lab where new workers are mastering the art of 3D printing that has the potential to revolutionize the way we make almost anything. So what we hear in this is it's not just about STEM. It's about using something else beyond STEM to make advanced manufacturing advanced. And what is that? It's design. You can't have new innovations come out of advanced manufacturing facilities, or 3D printers aren't going to produce amazing new things unless you have an artist or designer thinking about what those things could be. And for us at RISD, one of kind of the most important parts of this and why we think we could make this argument is it's deep in our history. So this is the founding mission statement of the Rhode Island School of Design. And the first statement in it says the instructions that RISD was founded so that we could give instructions of artisans in drawing, painting, modeling, and designing that they may successfully apply the principles of art to the requirements of trade and manufacture. So for 130 years, RISD has been about kind of combining art and design with the commercial world and with manufacturing. So this was a really important part of how we were able to come to this argument, is that it's always been a part of what RISD has done. It's part of our heritage. So that made it kind of authentic to us. Throughout the ages of America, art and design have been part of how America distinguishes itself in the kind of product marketplace. So in the 50s, cars began to become kind of designed objects that people used to reflect their identity through. And they also became designed objects that reflected the times. So cars started having fins on them to kind of look like airplanes in the 50s, because that was the period of time when the jet age was happening and people were really fascinated with planes. So America has always had a heritage of combining art with technology to produce desirable objects. And there's no better example of this today than Apple and their products. So, you know, there were MP3 players before there were iPods, but no one wanted to buy them because they were difficult to use and not desirable. And then the iPod changed all of that. So, you know, we really looked at, unfortunately, Steve Jobs' death as a pivotal moment for when the country started to understand the importance of design because of how he was memorialized and what people said about why Apple has come to be such a successful company. As this kind of argument has evolved, two RISD graduates at the same time kind of came to the forefront of the innovation economy. I don't know if any of you have heard of Airbnb, but that was started by two RISD grads. I always understood, I always thought that, you know, people said that they were a design-led company, and I thought that, oh, that meant, you know, they have a nicer looking website than VRBO. But it wasn't until I visited their company headquarters that I really started to understand that they're a company built on different kind of founding principles and philosophies, and they really are design-led. So they look at each point in the customer experience and what are the emotions that the customer is experiencing, and how can you kind of connect with that experience at each journey. They also think about that as they build their company culture. So all the conference rooms at Airbnb are based on different apartments that they rent on the site. They also have a themed meal every day based on a certain apartment. So the day I was there, it was Balinese food based on a apartment in Bali. So this sounds like kind of, you know, funky startup culture, but really what I saw was it was more than that. It was really about kind of getting deep into the customer experience and building something that will delight people. So there's been a bunch of studies that have kind of backed up this argument at the same time that we've been making it. One of whom is by Adobe, saying that creativity is kind of going to be the driver of economic competitiveness going forward. So this has helped us kind of connect art and design with economic growth. So that's kind of the overall platform and the argument that we're trying to make. Like I said, this has been important. This has been possible at RISD because this is something kind of authentic to the work that we've always done. You know, there's been lots of work historically at RISD about scientists and artists working together. And part of what we say when we talk about that work is that, you know, scientists have always thought that artists are the people that come in at the end and kind of make the poster that they bring to the fair to explain what their work is. But really, artists and scientists are kind of more similar than people ever knew, and they're both people who are kind of dedicated to asking the big questions. So if you think about it, artists are driven by a very personal vision, and they're driven to say something that matters to them. And scientists are driven to find out kind of the big mysteries of the universe. And so these two audiences are really kind of aligned. Just like designers and engineers kind of are committed to solutions and figuring out products that will suit people and be intuitive, scientists and artists are kind of both dedicated to maybe less practical but still similar questions. So we gathered a bunch of artists and scientists on our campus and held a workshop to kind of ask what STEAM could be once we started asking these questions. And this helps situate us at the kind of center of the conversation around this stuff. So this was how we got faculty. Faculty started to step forward and say, you know what, I want to be part of this. And from a marketing perspective, kind of getting a prestigious grant and then gathering people around this topic allowed us to start to own the conversation around this. There's been countless examples of kind of what we call STEAMy work happening at RISD, whether it's you know, NSF grants to think about climate change with artists and scientists working together, or teaching our undergraduate science courses. There's been classes about redesigning hospital experiences or redesigning astronauts' experiences. So these are all kind of traditionally STEM fields that artists are lending themselves to. We have faculty who have always kind of put their expertise on this, and what's been interesting is as STEAM kind of grew in the vernacular, it brought in opportunities for faculty at RISD that hadn't always come in. So it kind of became this bi-directional thing where they were doing work that we could then kind of insert into this platform and use the platform to kind of further advertise their work. Similarly, people started hearing, oh, Rhode Island School of Design is leading this thing called STEAM, and we would get tons of kind of media requests and speaking requests, which we could then funnel through to our faculty. So it became this kind of rising tide phenomenon that helped us advertise work that was always happening at the institution. We also got a grant to start something for our undergraduates called the Meharem STEAM Fellows, and these were basically funded internships to get our students out in nonprofits and governmental agencies, kind of environments where artists and designers traditionally hadn't been, and make the case that their skill set could actually make a difference in these environments. So these are kind of programmatic examples of how STEAM has lived at RISD. You know, one of the things I think is interesting is, you know, what you don't see here is a STEAM major. RISD is actually a very, in its structure, a very disciplinary place. We have deep, kind of rigorous majors. You major in a certain department, and we don't have a lot of interdisciplinary majors. Yet, the students and faculty are very interested in blending those boundaries, and some of these new programs allowed them to do that a little bit more. Students caught on to the idea, and there's now a RISD STEAM club, and also we're co-located in Providence with Brown University, right? We're both on College Hill together, and the Brown RISD STEAM Club has become kind of a joint force, and you have computer science kids and environmental science kids from Brown kind of working and doing events and interacting a lot with the RISD kids, which is kind of this living in action. So the other kind of main part of this that I want to speak to, in addition to how it kind of organically grew out of work that was happening at RISD, is that STEAM started to organically grow as a movement across the country. And I think a really important part to this thought leadership work is kind of the acknowledgement that in this era, it's impossible to own an idea, and that you actually want people to join into your idea, even if it's your competitors, because it makes the idea grow bigger. And as long as you are associated with it, even some of the time, that helps you. So that's part of kind of how I came to this as a marketer, and I think that that's not quite traditional. You know, I certainly got pushback from people who would ask me, you know, why does it help us if Yo-Yo Ma is talking at the White House about STEAM if he doesn't say the word RISD? Why is that good for us? And, you know, my argument is that if we are, even if, you know, half of the mentions of STEAM in the world mention RISD, or even a quarter, if we are associated with something that is growing, that brings us attention that we wouldn't already get. It also gives you kind of a voice that is much more authentic than kind of a traditional advertiser's voice. So this, it was not made at RISD, this timeline. This is a perfect example of it being kind of this organic, you know, movement that is much beyond RISD. You barely actually see RISD on this timeline. This was made by a SCAD graduate, which is one of our competitors. She was interning at the NEA, and it shows you how big an idea STEAM is. So it contains things from the Maker Movement to a science festival to a STEAM journal that happened at another university. And so you can look at this and say, well, you know, what is this doing for RISD? But we really felt like and took the position that as this thing grows, it will all come back to help us. What happened too is educators in the K-12 space became really hungry to share with each other kind of best practices about how to do this interdisciplinary work. And what we found that STEAM became a name for something that these teachers had already done. So for me, the classic story of this was I was dropping my daughter off at nursery school a few weeks ago, and I went and got, you know, checked our mailbox, and there in our mailbox was an advertisement for a school in town that was advertising themselves as having a nature-based, individualized STEAM curriculum. So that was a real moment for me when I realized, oh my gosh, this thing has become so much bigger than us. And for me, that felt good. We had our alumni grab hold of it. We have many alumni who are art teachers, and they were able to kind of grab onto this platform as a way to show the work that many of them had always done, collaborating with math teachers and science teachers in their high schools or in their lower schools. And a big moment was when last year Sesame Street, in their 42nd season, had been brought to you by the letters STEM, and their 43rd season was then brought to you by the letters STEAM. So they saw that adding an element of performing arts to the math and science curriculum that they were trying to teach to preschoolers made it much more compelling. So then the challenge for us, this is one more slide just kind of showing different programs, after school programs, conferences for teachers, camps, all kinds of different programs that had to do with STEAM. Excuse me. So then the challenge becomes, you know, if you have this kind of big thing that's gaining a lot of momentum on its own, how do you harness that energy and kind of bring it back to RISD? So this is just more examples of kind of people grabbing onto the acronym, it becoming a sticky thing that kind of described work that they were excited about. And these are some of the other institutions and partners that we were able to bring into the STEAM tent. So the other kind of main work that we were doing in addition to kind of using the STEAM acronym is government advocacy. So like I said, you know, here in Rhode Island, we were able to get a lot of access to our congresspeople, and that enabled us to start doing some advocacy work that really took hold in Washington. So I want to describe some of that work. STEAM began with Congressman Langevin, who is in Rhode Island. And he began by introducing a House resolution, which is legislation, although non-binding, kind of expresses the sentiment of Congress that he believed that legislation that was focused on STEM should also, there should be a committee that would consider how to add art and design to that legislation. So that was kind of our first kind of foot in the door legislatively. Last year we had a big step forward when a bipartisan STEAM caucus was launched in Congress. So, you know, all of us who work at a college, a caucus, the way to kind of understand it is it feels a lot like a student club to me. So it's people in Congress who get together around a certain issue and there's programming and they all kind of advocate for a certain issue together. So two Congresspeople, one from Oregon and one from Illinois, got together and launched this caucus. And, you know, our role in this was really to help them make the case. You know, we had gathered a lot of facts and figures about how science, technology, art, and design all work together to create innovation, some of the argument I went through before. And we were able to help them recruit partners and other spokespeople to kind of put art education at the center of some of this education legislation. So, you know, practically speaking, what we did was held a briefing in Congress, which is really just kind of a panel and an event. But you can see from this picture, you know, most briefings don't fill up at all, and people are really interested in this issue. And I think this all comes back to the fact that we were advocating for a cause, not an institution. And it was a bigger idea than just saying, you know, we are artists and please support us. It was about innovation and it was about something bigger than RISD. So I think that's what really helped us get attention on this. Back in Rhode Island, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi came to visit and we hosted her visit at RISD and were able to make a big presentation to her all about these ideas. So we were really trying to push this idea on many fronts, in the media, with the government, and kind of more broadly. So like I said, you know, as this was organically growing and as this was taking hold in Congress, my challenge as a marketer was really getting a lot of that energy harnessed back to RISD. And so how did we do that? A lot of it was about just kind of placing ourselves at the center of the conversation and convening people around this issue. So like we did a congressional briefing, we did one back at home to get people in Rhode Island tuned into these same issues. So we had innovators from across the state, the Rhode Island Department of Education, there's Congressman Langevin again, and just really getting people kind of on board with this idea. There was a lot of media that came out of this idea, and even though this slide just shows 3 different articles from the same publication, the Huffington Post, what I wanted to do was point out that you know, we began with our president as kind of a primary spokesperson for this movement, and his life story really tells the story of STEAM. He is a computer scientist who then went to art school. So, you know, he was clearly an asset for us in telling this story, that he could kind of speak authentically for it and that he was very passionate about it. But it became crucially important for us to kind of bring other people into that to lend validity and kind of expand the idea. So the second one shows the trustee, John Kamen, who actually came up with the acronym in our board meeting. He became very passionate about speaking out of this. And then another art school president. And so I think this is, you know, like I said, part of what makes this unique is, you know, allowing other people to make the case with you. So we've partnered with California College of the Arts, which is another art school in San Francisco, on STEAM efforts, even though they're one of our biggest competitors. And I think it allows us to both kind of make a stronger case for this idea. STEAM received a award at the Tribeca Film Festival for this initiative, and this really just allows RISD to get in front of different audiences that it wouldn't always get in front of. So this was another kind of marketing benefit for this work. And again, a lot of what this became about was convening people. And interestingly, what some of the challenge in doing that is always about balancing people from inside RISD and outside RISD for national credibility. So at this panel from South by Southwest, we had the president from RISD and also another professor, but then the researcher from Sesame Street who developed the STEAM curriculum, and then also someone from Adobe who could say from the employer's side that these kinds of graduates were going to be helpful to their company. The Student STEAM Club guest edited an issue of a magazine all dedicated to STEAM. This is a design magazine out of the Northwest, and we were able to gather a whole bunch of different contributors to this magazine. And then RISD came out with a book this year called The Art of Critical Making, which really helped us kind of highlight how our curriculum is linked to innovation. We had a website that I ran, or that I run, dedicated to this idea. And part of the challenge as a marketer is that same thing I've been talking about along. It's striking that balance between putting your institution at the forefront of this movement or of this cause that you're trying to champion while not making it all about your institution. And so we've had countless conversations internally about how much should this website scream RISD. And I actually think it's really important that it doesn't scream RISD, but that it's associated with RISD in the end. So this is, hopefully some of these points have come through the presentation, that STEAM became a platform for RISD that helps strengthen art education across the country. Like I said, there's been STEAM schools that have arisen all throughout the country that really help keep arts in the curriculum at a time when it's being cut. It makes a case that arts education produces graduates who are going to go on and be the innovators of the next century. And really, by being out there and being able to kind of champion this cause, I think this is the most important part, that it really reinforces our leadership position among art schools. That because we're out there making this case, people really look to us as kind of a thought leader, and that helps RISD's enrollment in the end. Also, by collaborating with scientists and getting some of the research money, that's kind of one of the more concrete kind of bottom line things that we're able to say this does for RISD. So if I kind of think about this and how it's the lessons that could be applied for other marketers about thought leadership, I think some of the lessons are to build a platform based on the natural strength of your institution. So it was very important, even though STEAM didn't arise from the bottom up in a way, that it kind of started at a trustee meeting of all places. It was an idea that had always been practiced at RISD. There was always art-science collaboration happening at RISD. There were always designers who were working with high technology and kind of using that overlap. So it has to be something authentic that your institution can champion. Another lesson that I've talked about is people will listen harder if you're representing a cause, not an institution. So if we had held a briefing in Congress about the Rhode Island School of Design, I don't think we would have gotten a packed room, but because we were kind of linked to a bigger idea, I think that's what helped us. Letting other people in is scary, but it helps an idea grow. Like I said, this is probably the part I've gotten the most pushback on, is we need to own this idea harder. And I actually think, with social media and the way that communications are so open these days, no one can ever own an idea again, and you just have to kind of like set it free and let it grow. Timely news hooks to get your idea out there. Like I said, this idea really took off right around the time of Steve Jobs' death, and as unfortunate as that is, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that there's a time when people are ready to hear an idea, and kind of jumping on a timely news hook can help you get your idea out there. And then obviously having an executive champion and a visible kind of embodiment of the idea, someone who's willing to get out there and speak about it, is helpful, whether that's a faculty member or a dean or someone in the administration. So I think for us, this has been a grand experiment. It's something that in the last 2 years has grown beyond my kind of expectations and certainly beyond what I thought it would when we started working on it. But it's been a real exciting thing, and I was glad to share the story of it with you tonight. So next week on Higher Ed Live, Amanda Costello will be leading a discussion on content strategy and working with specialists. I hope all of you will come back to hear her interesting talk.